Sogdians were the unsung masters of the Silk Road, and yet few people today have heard their name. These Iranian-speaking people from the region of Sogdiana, centered around the cities of Samarkand and Bokhara in modern-day Uzbekistan, became the most successful merchants and traders along the Silk Road from roughly the 4th to the 8th centuries CE. They were born traders, teaching their children the art of commerce from the age of 5. Sogdian merchants established trading colonies throughout Central Asia and China, serving as middlemen, translators, and bankers. They spoke multiple languages, understood diverse customs, and their commercial letters, discovered preserved in watchtowers along the route, reveal a sophisticated network of credit, partnerships, and long-distance business arrangements that wouldn't seem out of place in the modern world. The Silk Road faced its greatest test during the 13th century, when Genghis Khan and his Mongol armies swept across Asia like a devastating storm. Between 1206 and 1227, Genghis Khan conquered an empire stretching from Korea to Eastern Europe. Cities that resisted were utterly destroyed, and the death toll numbered in the millions. Yet paradoxically, this brutal conquest ultimately secured the Silk Road's golden age. Once the Mongols established control, they created what became known as the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace, a period of relative stability and safety that lasted through much of the 13th and 14th centuries. Under Mongol rule, the Silk Road became safer than it had been in centuries. The Mongols established a sophisticated relay system called the YAM, with stations placed roughly every 25 miles along major routes. Here, official messengers could exchange tired horses for fresh ones, allowing messages to travel with remarkable speed across the vast empire. A message could travel from Beijing to the Black Sea in just a few weeks, a journey that previously took many months. The Mongols issued passports called pases, protective tablets that guaranteed safe passage. Merchants carrying these tablets could travel the entire length of the Silk Road under Mongol protection, knowing that bandits and local officials would not dare interfere with those under the Khan's protection. It was during this Pax Mongolica that one of history's most famous travelers embarked on his legendary journey. In 1271, a 17-year-old Venetian named Marco Polo set out with his father and uncle on a journey to the court of Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan and ruler of the Mongol Empire's Chinese territories. Marco Polo would spend 24 years in the service of Kublai Khan, traveling throughout China and the Mongol Empire, witnessing marvels that Europeans had never imagined. When Marco Polo finally returned to Venice in 1295 and dictated his experiences in a book called The Travels, Europeans were astonished. He described paper money, an innovation the Chinese had developed in the 11th century but which wouldn't appear in Europe for centuries. He spoke of coal that burned like logs, of enormous cities with populations in the millions when European cities held only tens of thousands, of a sophisticated postal system, and of imperial palaces decorated with precious stones. Many of his contemporaries didn't believe him, thinking his tales were exaggerations or fantasies. They called his book Il Million, The Million Lies. Yet archaeology and historical research have confirmed the accuracy of most of his observations. The Silk Road also carried invisible travelers, deadly ones. The Black Death, the devastating plague that killed between 75 and 200 million people in the 14th century, traveled along the Silk Road from Central Asia to the West. The plague bacterium, carried by fleas living on rats, found the trade routes to be perfect highways for its spread. It reached the Crimea by 1346, carried by Mongol armies, and from there spread to Mediterranean ports aboard trading ships. By 1353, it had devastated Europe, killing roughly 1/3 of the entire population. The very networks that had brought prosperity and cultural exchange also brought catastrophe, a reminder that connection comes with both benefits and risks. Among the precious commodities that traveled the Silk Road were books and knowledge itself. The technique of papermaking, invented in China during the Han Dynasty around the 2nd century CE, gradually spread westward. The secret reached the Islamic world around 751 CE, when Chinese papermakers were captured during the Battle of Talas and brought to Samarkand, where they shared their knowledge. From there, paper mills spread throughout the Islamic world and eventually to Europe. This single transfer of technology revolutionized learning, making books far cheaper to produce than the parchment and papyrus previously used, and ultimately enabling the spread of literacy and the preservation of knowledge. The city of Dunhuang, at the edge of the Gobi Desert, became an unlikely repository of history. Here, in caves carved into cliffsides, Buddhist monks created what became known as the Mogeo Caves, filled with religious art spanning 1,000 years. In 1900, a Taoist monk discovered a sealed cave containing over 50,000 manuscripts and documents that had been hidden away around the 11th century. These documents, written in Chinese, Tibetan, Sanskrit, and other languages, included religious texts, administrative records, and even musical scores, providing an extraordinary window into Silk Road life. Breathe slowly, and imagine standing at the entrance to those caves, where ancient voices speak across centuries, where the treasures of empires lie waiting in the desert silence.